Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome indeed to another edition of Warhammer Weekly. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Prince Apophos, cursed beetle swarm of the desert. How you doing, Tom? Say hi.
Hey, friends.
Also joining us tonight is Nicholas Bolaire. How you doing, Nicholas? Could you tell people a little about yourself?
Good. I am a Warhammer fantasy player, Dark Elves currently, and hopefully Lizardmen in the near future. And I do have a channel where I put up some battle reports and commentary, but nothing major.
Yes, now that's a great segue. See, look at that. You teed us up perfectly. So you had gotten a bunch of Lizardmen. I remember this happening because I remember you showing some boxes on the PMP and whatnot.
Yes.
The painters motivating painters, and I remember then I believe that you had put your project on hold for basing concerns. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that was at the time when the rumors were really rampant about whether they were going to axe the Lizardmen totally or whether they were going to go with round bases, or something else crazy like that. And I was really psyched to start the project, but then I was like, I don't want to do it all and then find out like by the time I'm done that I did it wrong, or that it was going to be all changed and I have to do it over again. So I thought I'll put it off and do some other things, but now it's kind of just dragged on and on. I kind of thought it was going to be over with sooner, and then Materim went and painted up all his Lizardmen, and now I'm jealous.
Right, now it should look like you're following along right behind Materim, right? Yeah. Even though you arrived first. Oh well. Well, that's a good segue because I think we have some new information this week that relates to some of these bases and what's upcoming. So, Tom, why don't you tell us about some of the new? We had some possibly juicy things leak out this week. So, why don't you hit us with that?
Absolutely. So, it's always fun because obviously, like, rumors are all over the place. We have some some of the rumors were consolidated on Warseer, and kind of out of that, some of our normal, more reliable rumor mongers kind of slipped in and shared some things. And one of the things that they said was that that for 9th we're going to be seeing square bases. And that somebody who had said that they actually worked for GW at some recent point in time, they worked at a call center, I think. Was that right, Vince?
I believe so, yeah.
Shared that basically the round basis for 9th is kind of one of the bad rumors kind of circulating around. Which is fairly fascinating. I'm trying to find the other ones. There was a number.
Well, let me while you're looking, let me take a moment.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, there's been a lot of discussion about this upcoming one. Obviously, the other big rumor is what is exactly happening in 3 weeks. We know we've got these red dates coming up, and everything. We've seen more and more corroboration. That's a hard word to say. More and more corroboration of the idea that on the 24th, something big goes on pre-order. And so we saw some stuff this week that said it's going to be basically this skirmish game or some starter box that is for a skirmish game or something like that. And I thought that was really interesting because that, at the same time, there was some still round-based rumor floating around in the skirmish game, right?
Yeah, actually, the skirmish game, reliably, people have said, is a round-based setup.
Yeah. And what that makes me think, I think, you had brought this up earlier, and it's something that I think really bears repeating, and that is what, we've all sort of been assuming that this is all one connected thing, that the skirmish game leads into 9th, that 9th is the skirmish game or whatever. But maybe these are a little more separate than we thought, right?
GW has been known to release related but completely unrelated games, and you just have to think back to Mordheim and Warhammer. I mean, all of those minis came with round bases, if I remember correctly, or maybe no, they didn't. No.
Yeah, a lot of them were.
Yeah, they were. But needless to say, those games, I mean, not like you spent points in one, money in the other. Like it wasn't a one-to-one correspondence or movement between the games. And we had kind of assumed that they would try to create a unified system, but maybe they didn't. You know, one thing I had said with Vince is that maybe we're actually looking at the launch of two completely different things. One is a fantasy skirmish game with round bases that's meant to bring people into the hobby. And one is 9th edition, which is square-based, standard as we've kind of known it. You may have round bases for like new unit attachments, or maybe characters have round bases. Maybe, you know, in a sense, this is a ploy for them to be able to sell trays that have snap-in. Like, you know, we've heard this rumor about round bases that snap into, you know, like square trays. Maybe that's part of what this is. To, you know, like that then becomes another thing that GW can sell to the new players that are coming in from the skirmish game. If they want to bring in their skirmish minis into the fantasy war game.
Sure. Nick, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's possible. And with regards, I mean, I remember there was another rumor. I don't know if it was discredited or not, but then there was rumor that was going to be a mixed scenario, like that, like characters and monsters were going to be on round bases, but rank and file was going to stay on square bases. And that would make sense with the idea of the skirmish game, because if you assume that the low model count skirmish game is all characters and monsters, then, you know, they'd be on the round bases, and then you just add them into an army of rank and file, and then you could have a mixed scenario.
Right. And it would also make sense in that smaller skirmish game. You really don't care about like arc of sights and stuff like that. You know, I think back to like Mordheim, where you really, you know, your character could basically see 360 degrees around them. They could just sort of turn on the spot and go charge at somebody who was standing behind them. You know, walking 2 feet to somebody's left didn't make you immune to being attacked by them.
Right, and that seems to be the case with most of the current skirmish games out there. Your Infinity or Malifaux or whatnot. You know, they're round base and they're, you know, not using arcs of vision.
Right.
It also explains why we've been having this rumor confusion. Lots of chaos coming, no pun intended, but lots of chaos coming from the different rumor mongers who've been very reliable, giving different reports of what's coming. The reality is that maybe all of them are right. So when statements get made like 9th is not on round bases, maybe that is 100% true, because we're still going to have square units. Like, we're still going to have the normal thing, but we can still have a box coming in 3 weeks that is all on round bases, because that's not 9th. That's the new skirmish game. You know, another thing regarding the fluff of the skirmish game that's been released, and this is another leak, that another kind of confirmed thing this week, is that it's going to be it's been chaos for quote-unquote humans, but what was confirmed is that it's Khorne specifically. So the units are Khorne-based, and it's going to be some type of Sigmar-aligned kind of super troops with some Dwarven siege. And on top of that, supposedly the setting for it is actually at kind of the 11th hour in Middenheim, in the midst of all of the conflicts that are going on. So it's still set in end times, not in kind of the post-destroyed whatever the new thing is. Which is a really interesting decision of them to release this new game, so to say, in the midst of a world that we know it will be destroyed. Yeah, that's what all the rumors are kind of pointing to.
Well, let's go with sort of the parallel universe theory, where just because it was destroyed at the end of End Times doesn't mean that every version of the Warhammer world met the same fate. You know, they may be going with that sort of DC comic-style multiverse.
Absolutely. It also sets up at the same time. Look, we're picturing this in our minds, this skirmish game, as this one-time product with a setting. But, you know, Warhammer has, like, I think people who've played long enough will remember that Warhammer is willing to play with time. Okay? When I got my first Empire Army book, which was like a 4th edition Empire book, Sigmar was one of the special characters I could take. Now, he wasn't still alive, okay? But I could play him, I could put Sigmar on the table. He was a big naked dude who had a hammer, and he could go smash people with it with a big strength 10 attack. And Mordheim itself was set 500 years or something previous to the current time in Warhammer. They're clearly showing that they're willing to play around with time for settings. It's just where that particular product is set. So there's no reason why they couldn't release a skirmish game now set in Midheim at the 11th hour, and then 9th rolls out, creates a new setting, and then they update that skirmish game again through a limited release product, right, where we get the new setting and the new info for the skirmish game that brings it up to date. I think that that's, you know, just as likely or possible as anything else. There's no reason we have to believe that it's always perma-locked, right?
Yeah, and it extends. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was saying. No, I was gonna say what it does is it extends the lifespan, quote unquote, of end times into the summer. Because right now, like, we're all waiting, kind of on bated breath, what is coming next. Well, suddenly, if we have another end times release product, another cycle, at the beginning of May of end times, that extends, quote unquote, their product life cycle of the previous miniatures that they've released, which is good for them, and it buys them another month or two to then release fantasy. To say, you know, like, to show them that, quote, you know, to show their customers that they're not, quote unquote, like, not just scrapping their lines, not just scrapping fantasy, even if some things do end up going, you know, by the wayside in 9th edition.
Yeah, and there was one more rumor that came out that I took keen note in, since I'm gonna go ahead and say if it was somebody actually who had put it out there, and it aligned perfectly with my theory from last week. And so if this turns out to be true, I would like it to be known that I will take full credit for breaking this idea open, as I saw it nowhere else before me. So that is right. I will win the internet if this turns out to be true. So I'm excited about that. But no, the whole point was I made last week, I talked about the Khorne Demon Kin. And the idea that basically the world we get in 9th isn't a bunch of new army books just coming out like we've seen every edition so far. Instead, what we get is these big super factions that take and shove a lot of stuff together. And the new books we get are more like the Khorne Demon Kin or the Adepticus Mechanicus, whatever that name is, out of the Mars people, out of 40K, where with a few small releases, Harlequins would be another good example, with a few small releases, and by then combinations with the existing troops in the factions, you have a whole new army, right? So I can take, and everybody said, look, dwarves will be with the Empire and all these other people in this thing in 9th edition, but they'll do these small releases that will make you know, like you'll be able to break it out. Think of like the Khorne Demon Kin, only it'd be like the Dwarven Holds or something, whatever, I don't know. And you'd have a full dwarf army plus. And you're going to get more releases outside of that, because they could also show up in small numbers in other books. So instead of everything being like, this is its block, and this is this army's block, and this is this army's block, we're using that same crap throughout. Like, that is to say, everybody's got like a spear troop, so we can just throw those elven spear troops around. Whatever, you know, they can show up all the time. But instead, then I can also pull in my witch elves and stuff into the Cult of Cain book. And I can pull in my you know, I can have a bunch of other crap from high elves and wood elves and whatever and dark elves into like some kind of ancient magic book. I don't care. These ideas can be terrible and completely unmoving to you. I'm not meaning to sell these as legitimate books. I'm only meaning to express that this could be the way they go. And now that seemed to be what somebody put their finger on.
I want to offer another rumor, another thing that kind of came down the pipe this week, and it was that regarding some of the lore with 9th edition, which is coming, and obviously this is not necessarily the skirmish game what's coming in 2 weeks, but this would be farther out potentially in the summer, was that that one of the rumor mongers suggested that their birdies have communicated to them that the trio of elves are alive and present, being Malekith, Elariel, and Tyrion, alive or present. And that the lovely dead friends Nagash and Cetra, the Power Rangers, Vampire Holy Knights, Aberrash and Gills, Le Breton, and then Sigmar / Archaon, and then but they've heard nothing about Khalida, Neferata, and Arkan, and the others. Same about Erloth, so they haven't heard anything about them, which is interesting and fantastic. But I actually have a theory. We're gonna transition into a brief tinfoil hat theory regarding the figure that we've seen in the darkness. So everybody's like, oh, and we kind of hypothesize, well, is it Sigmar or is it Archaon? And we kind of joked about that. Oh, another rumor that had come out, by the way, this last week was that Archaon's actually a good guy. He's like the good guy in this next edition. And so I wasn't sure if that was like reverb that we were hearing from the rest of us talking about it. And it was like showing up on some of the rumor sites or whatnot. But it got me thinking about the fact that, we said it would be neat if it was actually Archaon that grabbed the orb and did the miracle. But the obvious one, obviously, would be Sigmar doing that. And we had kind of seen this struggle between Sigmar and Archaon and whatnot. And it dawned on me, why not, how about it, it'd be the, Taco Girl it. Mm-hmm. Why not both? Yeah, because reality is that we know that Sigmar possesses or can inhabit bodies, okay? Because the reality is this. He's still walking around in Karl Franz's dead body. That's what happened at the end of, throughout Archaon. What we found out in the Archaon book was that that Karl Franz died when the Glotkin killed him, and Sigmar came and inhabited his body. We know that Sigmar has also inhabited the Wind of the Heavens, Azir. So what is not to stop him from inhabiting Archaon? Either willingly or unwillingly, if Archaon did pull a Vader at the end of it or whatnot. I mean, for all we know, that could be both of them. He could be
Which
Sigmar.
I think is awesome. Yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see Archaons be the Lord of the End Times and the bringer of the new times, right? Absolutely. Him turning and becoming a new ultimate hero with possessed by Sigmar, that's fantastic. That gets my blood pumping right there. Nick, what do you feel about that?
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible because they left it very open as to whether those characters actually died or not. I mean, with Malekith and the elves, when they go into the void, I mean, it very pointedly avoids saying that they died. In fact, right. I mean, in Malekith's little final scene, when he gets sucked into the void finally, after the other two, his life flashes before his eyes, and as that's happening, the memories are taken from him, and he's sort of left at the end without an identity. But he's not dead, and they don't say he expires. So I mean, even he's possible as one of the ones that could be that figure. And in fact, they specifically spoke about that amongst the three of them, that they all felt that the Rift had the power to create new life and new worlds, and that if they had a little bit better foresight, they could have actually planned better to use it.
So do you remember?
People can survive through the end and creation of the new world. We know that because all of the elves did it, right? All of those elves. When you read Cain and the Ranadandra, all of those elves used to be they weren't gods. There was no heaven. They were just the elven heroes who had survived the last go round on the wheel, and now they're the gods in the new world because they were just hyper powerful beings that had survived through the destruction and recreation of the world. That's all it is. Some of them more so than others. Some were straight reincarnated, and some just lived.
Right. If we invoke, 40K for a moment, GW is perfectly fine with saying that, people can survive in the Chaos War. So right. It's not like, they actually went into space and they're all going to freeze to death or something like that. I mean,
Malekith did for 100 years in the Dark Elf lore.
Right.
That's the reality. He got sucked into the warp. In 100 years, he pops back out, wounded but alive.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I mean, I think we can't take anything for granted when it comes to those characters, and I think it'd be wonderful if some of those special characters that we know and love ended up being the gods and sort of progenitors of a new world in Ninth. I never had an attachment to Tull or Ulrich or whatever. All these people, because I mean, whatever, the gods of Warhammer are honestly pretty fantasy boring people. It's just it's the god of beasts and the other. I mean, it's like a trope machine churned them out, right? But but now, if it were to be these special characters who I've gotten to know over 20 years of playing the game, and played, I myself put that guy on the table, right? He was a special character I played in a game, and now he's the god of my army. I don't know. That seems like it's got some traction, at least with me.
Well, I mean, the other option is, do they recycle these characters in the same roles, or do they go with the trope of mixing them up? Like in the Archaon book, they made many pointed references to life and death being, flip sides of the coin. So, in 9th edition, do you find a living Nagash, who's now, a life-centered character, and Alarielle as some sort of crazy undead, death goddess or something like that? I mean, those are all possible in my mind.
Sounds amazing.
Chaos is what chaos does. I mean, who knows what comes out the other side of the warp. I'll tell you what comes out the other side of the warp, and that is Cetra. I didn't need to read that rumor to know that Cetra survived. His name is Cetra the Imperishable. That's not a joke. He didn't make that. That's just how it is, homie. That dude is the Galactus of the Warhammer universe. He survived, just like Galactus. He survived the last universe coming through. All right, that's what it is. You can't mess with Cetra. He is forever the King of Kings. All right, very good. Did we have any other news or rumors we wanted to touch on?
I don't know. I mean, we have a little bit here, a little bit there. I mean, nothing that was really kind of knock out of the park, significant. No, nope.
Just exciting. All right, that's fine. Yeah. We won't push it. I will say that we've mentioned the Toughest Girls in the Galaxy 2 Kickstarter the past couple weeks. I'll just close it out. The Kickstarter ended today very successfully. However, they do still have a PayPal option open. So if somebody was inclined to go check it out, you still can, and you can still get in on it through PayPal. So
there was one more rumor I wanted to hit real quick.
Okay.
Vince, your proud nail, and we've talked about this, your proud nail may be being addressed in the new edition. And yes. One of the things that they talked about was the idea that there are no more points per mini. It's points per unit. So some units are a single mini, like monsters or mounted characters or whatnot. But what we're going to be seeing likely is you purchase a unit of 10, and it would not surprise me if they went like Mantic King of War style, which is like you purchase a unit of 10, 20, 40, or something like that. A unit, if they really wanted to scale it down, they could go like 5, 10, 20, or something like that. But needless to say, like it sounds like we're purchasing units now. We're not purchasing individual minis. So
right, and we also don't know how that scales up, because clearly it's going to scale up somehow. It's not like the unit's going to always only be 10 or only be 20 or something, right? There's going to be some kind of scaling on it, and I would point out that that's not unprecedented in the history of Warhammer, and even I think 40K still does this to some degree, where you pay like a base price for 10, and then you can add on additional ones up to a maximum. So, like, if you think of the Battle Pilgrims in the Bretonnian book out of 6th edition, and they weren't the only people that did this, it's just what's most fresh in my mind. You pay like 118 points for the Relic Way and 6 dudes, and then you add on additional dudes at a set cost up to a maximum of 24 more dudes, and that's it. That's your size, right? It's this to this. That's it. And so it could always be individual scale up as well, or it could be block purchases. You can add another 10 for another X. 100 points base, every 10 you add another 100, maximum 40. Could be something like that. Yeah, so, but yes, I agree.
That makes sense to me, because that also, would make sense with like the way that they have done the battle scrolls in Archaon, where you're buying, units. A unit of this, a unit of that, a unit of this is what makes up this particular battle scroll, as opposed to here's a set number of points. And I almost wonder if, since GW, has been positioning themselves more, we're a model company, we're a collectible miniatures company, it would not surprise me at all if they wanted to move away from the extreme focus we've gotten on tactical list building, where we go, I've got 2,400 points or 2,500 points, and then from that math equation, now I'm going to craft my army, and they want you to focus more on this is the army and not so much, the math of what's the best way to use every single point.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of do hope that proud nail gets tamped down. I've never liked it that much. I find it to be a lot of fiddly stuff. But for the most part, I also find it to be challenging to newer players who often struggle with it and don't really understand how big they're supposed to buy units. When it just says, 1+ minimum 10 or something, and you pay per model. I found new players can often find that very challenging. And so, I'm not opposed to having still a large amount of flexibility, but a little bit of guidance, putting newer people on an easier path into the game is probably good for all of us when it comes down to it. All right, very good. Let's move on past rumors. Let's talk about some hobby time. So, Nick, we talked earlier about the shelving of the Lizardmen. So what have you been working on? You said you turned to some other stuff. What's on your desk? What have you been working on recently?
So I've been working on a few Malifaux miniatures. I picked up Malifaux, and I've been playing that somewhat in the meantime mostly because I actually know some people who play Malifaux around me, and I have a hard time getting fantasy games in. So it just was a good way to actually play. It's a low miniature count game, so I've been sort of doing that. And then next up, I have more Dark Elves. I am working on my lists for Bayou Battles in the summer, which is an uncomped event in Texas. So the lists I'm looking at are a little more traditionally competitive, so I'm going to get a couple more Warlocks and things like that. Another Lord on Pegasus. So that's the next thing. I've got them assembled in Prime, so I gotta paint those, and then I should be good to go. A couple more Bolt Throwers probably, and then I'll have my my Dark Elves ready for the summer.
Nice.
I'm still waiting on the Lizardmen until we see what Ninth offers.
Sure. Isn't Bayou in Louisiana?
No, it's in Houston.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the Bayou, yes, I would traditionally associate the Bayou,
right?
But I guess they got the name first.
Is it in Lake Charles?
No, it's in Houston.
Which is a suburb of
Houston. Very good. Yeah. Well, that should be an interesting tournament there. So it's the cheese is wide open now. Are there any restrictions on it? Or is it completely uncomped?
They have a Highlander rule where if you are using a special character, there's only one per tournament of each character. So if you're the first guy to submit a list with Hellebron, you get Hellebron, and anybody else has to make a new list.
I love the Highlander rule. I've seen some other tournaments do that. I love the Highlander rule because, well, there can be only one, as we know. But also then when you're the one who gets that character, it's like, yeah, that's right. Who's got the Hellebron in this room? It's me.
And then they have a comp council. So basically, they reserve the right to reject lists that they find would be extremely unfun, and then they just give you a comp score between 1 and 5. And then the way that they do the rest of the comp's kind of interesting. When you play after you've played all your games, you rate your opponents from hardest list to softest list. So the 5 people you played, you rate them hardest to softest, and depending on how many harder than average versus softer than average scores you get, that builds in the rest of your comp score, and it winds up just being an extra 0 to 20 battle point type scenario.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool. It's I think you and I talked about it a little on when we were talking about last week's episode, and the combination of sort of panel comp plus opponent comp, I think, is a really neat way to get an average. I mean, yeah, certainly there's a chance that your opponents, if you really kick them in the teeth, are going to downrate you. But at the same time, if you really kick them in the teeth repeatedly, maybe they should not, down comp you because you really did bring a hard as nails list.
Right, and because they're doing it as comp as opposed to, doing that in the sportsmanship score and giving someone a low sportsmanship because you thought they had a hard list.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, good stuff. Well, I look forward to seeing those Dark Elves in the PMP. And as well, you should share up the Malifaux, too. What crew is it, by the way?
I have the few battle reports I put up are with Von Schill and the Outcasts, and I'm working on. I got some of the Victoria miniatures to go along with that, and then I actually have an Arcanist Marcus crew as well, but I'm having that painted by Alicia Merritt whenever her backlog gets
It's cleared out. She's got a long backlog there. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm painting my own Outcast, and I'm gonna have her paint my Arcanists.
All right. Tom, what about you? What's on your desk, sir?
I am slowly working through my Savage Orcs. My Savage Orc proxy fake goblins.
Very nice. Oh, very nice. I just want to throw in a comment here. So Michael of Materum and Du Bois is watching the show, and he said that he believes that the book name for the Dwarven book should be called Grudge Bearer, as I had previously stated, and you're damn right it should. I would buy that book. That's such a badass name, and I hate dwarves like I hate hell. Like, yes, Grudge Bearer, absolutely. Print it, G-Dub, do it. All right. So, yes, very good, Mike.
The collector's edition dwarf book looked like the Book of Grudges and had the dwarf on it.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, for me, my hobby time. Gee, what am I working on? What could it be? Could it be some Bretonians? Maybe. There they go again. Yeah, I mean, of course, obviously, you don't pay one night at a time and get through a whole thing. There's the most recent finished one. He'll go up on the PMP sometime soon. But yeah, we're working my way through my Grail Knights this week.
Didn't you just finish your Bombshell?
My what? Oh, yeah, but I didn't post her up yet. I'm saving her for the painting show.
Oh.
On Faces with Paul. Yes, I also painted that, but well, I'll save that. What Tom is referencing is I painted one of the Wiedemann pinup girl minis that I thought they were pretty awesome. If you're not familiar, if you know what I'm talking about, you know Wiedemann, the pinup girl shirts and stuff. They did a line of miniatures. If you don't know what I'm talking about, good luck Googling that, because that's an impossible word to spell. Go ahead, Wiedemann. Have a good time. No, it's whatever. I will put a link to their stuff actually after the show because it is pretty awesome. All right, let's move on to tonight's feature, which is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And tonight we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of that guy right there, Archaon. Specifically, we're going to restrict ourselves to Book 2, so we're not going to talk about the fluff tonight. We're going to talk about some rules. What's good? What's bad? What's just downright ugly? All right. Nick, since you are our special guest, of course, you get the honor and curse of going first.
Okay. Well, I would say that I really like the campaign. I do like, maybe not every individual mission, but I like the campaign as they've set it up, and I like the fact that it has rules specifically for bridging the games. It's not just like play this game, then play that game, then play this game. They've actually got rules for if you're playing with one of the incarnates, and if they get killed in that game, there's a chance that they can't come back for a next game or something along those lines, and that these particular scenarios are taken. They all happen at the same time, so their outcomes don't affect each other. So it actually has sort of like a little flow chart to it that makes it feel more like a campaign than just a collection of isolated historical scenarios.
I like that.
And I kind of like the battle scrolls, and I thought it was interesting the way they did them with the, you get this unit and that unit and this unit without really talking about points and without talking about the actual unit, composition. So sort of like what we're going with units is like, okay, you have to take a unit of X and a unit of Y, but you can make, one of them small and one of them big, or however you want to do it. It seems more open. And so that's what I would say the good is. The bad, I don't really see too much in there bad. I actually kind of liked most of what I had seen rules-wise. I mean, I guess the bad would be so many special characters with enormous point totals. And I've never been a fan of special characters in general because I like, making my own narrative. The ugly, I would say, would be there's no way that I would ever have the complete collection of all their models that you would need to even attempt to play all those scenarios. And again, I think that's where they go with their focus on the collectibles now, because it's kind of like, oh, here you can play this whole campaign, but you've got to buy 4 Bloodthirsters or something like that, because they'll be like one setting, one scenario. It's like, well, you have one of this kind of Bloodthirster and 2 of these Bloodthirsters and a 4th Bloodthirster. Good luck with that.
You're telling me you don't have a Nagash, an Archon, a Tyrion, a Teclis,
all the elves, all the demons,
yeah,
all the
exactly.
Empire. Yeah.
Crawl Friends on Deathclaw, 4 Bloodthirsters. I mean, it's like you're not even playing this game, Nick.
Right.
Jeez. Yes, that is true. I certainly agree with that. I really love the battle formations, and my hope is that in the next edition we see more stuff like that, but that we reduce the reliance on special characters, right? So instead of seeing like Alariel, it would just be like level 4 elf archmage who has light or life or whatever, some crap like that, whatever. All right, what was your, and then was that
Yeah, that was my
What's your ugly?
That was my ugly.
Oh, that was your ugly. Okay, very good. All right, awesome, very good. Tom, your turn. Good, bad, ugly.
I would have to say my good is that like everyone else, I love the battle scrolls. But what I think is so crunchy about them is not just the formations themselves and the unique things that they're letting you do points-wise, but the special rules that are coming to the table with the formation. That's, in my mind, what makes it real, is when I lay down the force of the flame, the host of fire, and now everybody in my army is getting devastating charge and flaming attacks. Like, that's huge. That's a huge swing in how those units are playing because of the significance of devastating charge, for example. So for me, that was just so, I love the new rules. I love the taking how things are and flipping them on their head, or twisting and changing, and so I'm a big fan of that aspect of the battle formations. The bad, this may seem like a small nitpick, almost on the edge of being a lore issue, but so I love that Caradhran got the Wind of Fire. It makes sense. Totally in Phoenix Guard, the head. Okay, whatever. I know that dwarf players are mad. Deal with it. No, but what I'm frustrated about is that Ashtari is his Frost Phoenix. As Phoenix get old, they get cold. That's kind of how the lore is going. And so you have this named, and as I kind of dug through all the rest of the book, there's this kind of when he takes the lore of fire, Ashtari ignites on fire. And so now you have a Frost Phoenix that's traditionally been a Frost Phoenix that's now a Fire Phoenix. And so anybody that has that model or has done that model, it's worthless now.
Or we could just pretend like it's orange, or Rime Fire, or Cold Fire.
Yes, absolutely. But that gets to the point. That frustrates me that it changed a fundamental aspect of that model itself. Because the Ashtari head on the model has, I'm looking at the picture of them painting it up, and they have the Frost Phoenix head on the Fire Phoenix in the Archaon book, but they've clearly went through and cut all the snowflakes off of the head before they painted it fire. And so it just it's a fundamental change to what he is on, and I don't know. It got my goat. So whatever.
I see. Well,
yeah.
I'm sure you'll say you and the 2 other players in the world who that bothered will contend
exactly. I liked Caradhran, and so again, this is part of a lore thing, but I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, congratulations, you weakened his Phoenix by making him.
There we go. Now we've come to the heart of the issue. You just said he's on the crappier Phoenix.
Absolutely.
No.
Way to be shitty. Okay. And then the ugly for me is it's the ugly for you was there's no way that anyone is ever going to play through those scenarios because of just the models required and everything. For me, there is no way that anyone is ever going to be able to be allowed, in my mind, to field the grand army of the Everchosen. Laying down Skaven lightning cannons and doom wheels alongside demon princes. That shit is not going down. Like, that is not happening. And I think that speaks to a much larger part of what is ugly about this whole end times thing, is that I just don't feel like we're going to get mileage out of it. Like, I love these special characters, and I love, like, what's going on in the story, but the reality is that, like, a lot of this stuff is never going to see the light of day. No one's ever going to play the Kane magic system.
Like, except for this community, right? I mean, Once Bitten was going through and starting with Nagash, right? And he was running through the special scenarios. So probably the only place you're never going to see that played by some random person in a store, and it's never going to be played in a GT. But you might have somebody do it on a YouTube channel, that has a good collection and friends with a lot of collections. So I mean, that would be the only place I'd see it, right? If Once Bitten decides that he's going to do the Archaon book, that's the only place you're going to see it.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'd say. Like, I think that you're right. Grand Legion of the Everchosen probably isn't showing up at a GT. Like, even GTs that allow the combined armies are probably like, no. Skaven slaves plus demon princes or whatever seems like a not great combo. But at the same time, I still love that stuff exists because they're proving that they can have these options for your game in your basement. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people, around the country who are just playing Basement Hammer, and I'm willing to bet there's been plenty of those armies that have hit the table there,
right.
and good on it.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's sort of, again, going back to like the 40K analogy. Apocalypse games in 40K where it's just kind of like take a whole bunch of crazy crap and throw it on the table and let's blow stuff up is popular, or it seems popular with that audience. So I think maybe they were going for the same idea with fantasy, and I don't know if maybe the YouTube community is a little bit more skewed as to the way we play Warhammer, but that seems to be a less of a focus of just let's throw a bunch of stuff on the table and see what happens.
Right. All right, I'll do mine quickly because we have a lot of questions and I want to get through a bunch of them. So here we go. In very short order. Okay. Good. I like all of the special characters that were introduced. I thought they were really fun. I like the twist on them. Like Isabella had a nice, color and flavor to her. Abilities were very interesting. I'm not worried about their power level, they're good or bad or whatever, but I thought that her, Grimgor, Balthazar, like these characters felt right. They felt like they were telling the story they meant to be told, they were meaning to tell. Loved all of them. Thumbs up. Good. Bad. The Skull Reapers and the Wrathmongers, the models themselves, and the Skull Reapers mechanically. I think the Wrathmongers are pretty good glass cannons. I think they're like ultimate glass cannons. I think the Skull Reapers are just out and out bad. I think the models in all cases are utter garbage. I don't know where they raided like they raided like a Dick's Sporting Goods and stole all their like hockey leg pads, and then decided to run into battle shirtless. But that was a poor choice all around. Those guys are terrible, and the Skull Reapers, I think, are just completely forgettable. They feel completely duplicitous. There's a reason there was one thing called Blight Kings, because that's all we needed of 40 mil based infantry. We didn't need two different kinds for no reason. And the Skull Reapers are duplicitous ones. And then the Ugly. The Ugly is that Bloodthirster with Heroic Killing Blow, because that is ugly. The mess he's gonna make of anything he happens to get into contact with. I love that guy. I think sure he can be killed off like all big monsters can, but shut up. Who cares? That's sweet. Put a giant Bloodthirster with. I mean, he doesn't even need Heroic Killing Blow. It's so hilarious. He has like 20,000 attacks at strength a million. But whatever, it's still more fun if he can heroic killing blow everything, because it's awesome.
And initiative 9.
And initiative 9, yeah. But doesn't he have a great weapon? But he never gets to use that. I'm pretty sure the HKB one has it.
Yeah, he has a great weapon.
Yeah,
Yep.
so he's heroic killing blowing with his initiative 9
Hey,
last.
he can
But
have
hey,
his
whatever.
demonic gifts.
That's right. He could get like an
Yeah.
always strikes first gift or something,
Yeah,
right?
he could grab ASF off the demonic gift table, which would make him then go on his initiative with his great weapon. He'd elf it out. He'd become like the greatest white lion in history. All right, very good. So that's mine. Let's go to some questions. Here we go. All right, Matiram, starting us off. How would you rate the 5 End Times books from best to worst? Well, that's a big question. All right, let's just go down your list real quick. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nicholas, if people need a moment, I can do this very easily. But otherwise, you can start.
Go 1, 5, 3, 4, 2, and that's mostly just based on my personal, preferences as far as the fluff and whatnot goes.
Gotcha. So you're going Nagash, Archaon, Kane, Thankful, Glotkin.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Got it. Tom.
1, 3, 5, 4, 2. So I would swap Archaon and Kane.
Gotcha. All right, fair enough. For me, 4. So Thankful, obviously, the story of the real heroes of the world, the most important book. And then Nagash, because it was fantastic. Kane, because it was Shakespeare told out through the story of elves. Archaon, because it was a good ending. Like, I'm not actually rating it. I actually really liked the book. It just didn't. I love the other 3 more. And then finally Glotkin, which was truly the Phantom Menace of the series. It's what we all wish we could forget ever existed. All right.
Pretty bad.
It was. Okay. His next question. It certainly seems like the interest and excitement of the End Times fell off considerably as the series went on. What, if anything, could they have done in Archaon to regain some of that momentum? Well, I will answer that right out of the gate and say I'm not sure they didn't. In that I saw a lot of people losing their minds over the events of Archaon, and people are still talking about it. The gas station bathroom of the world, known as the Internet, can't stop complaining about what the world is and what they're positive it's going to become, even though they have as much foresight and knowledge into this as if they all stood around and shook magic 8 balls. But the forums seem pretty convinced that they know exactly what's going on. So I think there is a lot of talk about it.
Yeah, and I would say that I think that it's not so much that there's a lack of interest in End Times. I think End Times is still a great concept that does draw a lot of interest, but that maybe there's a little bit of fatigue of giant models and special characters, more so than End Times.
That's fair.
I would say in Archaon, the 2 things that would have, I think, the 3 things that would have drawn people back in and maintained momentum. The first is revealed that Archaon was actually Sigmar. I think that would have been huge. I kind of talked about that previously as a theory. Because imagine the disenfranchisement and everything that comes along in the Empire with a revelation like that. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is let them actually save the world at the end and have to pick up the pieces. Okay? Let the world literally be ransacked, more blown up, the world in post-apocalyptic state, everyone disenfranchised because now Sigmar was actually the bringer of the end, that was the apocalypse that was prevented. Where do we go from here? It truly is the Buffy musical walking through the flames, for those of you guys that recognize that reference, of where do we go from here? Because everything is just foobarred. And so I think that would have been just, from a storytelling standpoint, the amount of momentum moving forward with all of the races. What does it look like now for the combined Elven forces? What does it look like now that, that the Empire needs to refine their new identity, and Bretonnia has lost their god, and yeah, like the storytelling possibilities would have been amazing. Alternatively, if they wanted to keep the current ending or the current situation, let the world be dissolved, but let the incarnates push into the warp to try to destroy the gods. And so,
yeah, I think I like your last one better. I do not like the idea of I don't like the idea of Mad Max Warhammer, which is what that second one would have looked like. Like, yeah, the world's a little garbage. Like, I don't need a post-apocalyptic game, which is what that would be. It's absolutely post-apocalypse.
Yeah.
So, like, but I would have been fine with getting a better vision of the hero's actions going into 9. I think that would have been cool. So we had a little more wetting our palate than just, it's also a beginning. So that is a little too clever, especially given the brick wall of silence GW normally puts out. It really puts us all in this place of waiting. All right, more questions. We got a lot. We're moving quick here, folks. We're moving quick. All right, Dice Miniature Paint Guy. The End Times. As a whole, is it the best thing to ever hit fantasy? Yes or no, in one sentence, why?
I'm a more recent Warhammer player, so I played briefly in 7th, and I own some interest in 6th, so my perspective is a little off. But I would say yes, only because it does really move the story forward and force whatever's coming next to be new and not just a retread with some retcons in the lore like you would see from previous Army books between editions.
All right, I like it. Tom?
I am also a new player. And to frame this, I bought my first army in September.
So right around Nagash's release.
Nagash released at the end of August. And it's because we were watching, like I was doing reselling and stuff like that and just making money off Warhammer, but I had been a watcher for a long time because I just couldn't get into it. I didn't want to get into it. I knew the grind that was Warhammer, I knew the money sink that was Warhammer, and so I watched it from afar and I wasn't interested and I wasn't involved. And Nagash pulled me in. Narrative.
I like it.
So for me, like, the End Times are what pulled me into fantasy. So I can't say that it's not, the best thing, because it's what finally interested me in the world and in the game.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes as well. It's the biggest, most interesting event that I've seen in my time here since '97, and it's interesting. It kindled a bunch of interest in the hobby. People got excited. It moved the story along. It proved that they were bold. You can think some of these things failed or not. I don't care. That's the whole point. They took risks in this. They killed things people love. They made new things that people might hate. They tried a bunch of new stuff. They threw out a bunch of weird rules and said, here, give these a shot. See if you have fun. That is exactly what I want out of my gaming company. I do not want my gaming company to sit around and try to make a perfectly stable rule set that never changes just so we can play the same tournament game over and over and over again. I'm completely sympathetic to the tournament scene. I love a good tournament game. I love to test my skills. But at the same time, like, I've played competitive Magic since 1994. That game changes every 3 months, right? And what was good one week is not good the next. And that's what keeps the game alive and interesting and going to me, to a person with my set of interests. Now, your psychographic profile might be different, but to me, that's what made it going. So to me, this shows, a willingness to push the envelope. So, yes. There we go. All right. Also from Dice Miniature Paint Guy, is the world where fantasy is set a planet in the world of 40K? So this is pure conjecture. Yes or no?
I'm okay with it, and in fact, if the rumors of the skirmish game on round bases are true, I would not be surprised to see skirmish game crossover as their first experimentation in that.
Sure. I will say yes without. I mean, like, who knows what their ultimate explanation is? But at least in the past, yes, without question. If you go get the Amazons that were made for Mordheim, like they made an Amazon Mordheim starter kit, And if you go get those Amazons, they have special weapons called like their Sun Staff and their Sun Gauntlet. You may know them as laser guns and laser pistols, like power weapons. They could have power fists and stuff because they lived on an island that still had the technology of the old ones. And they're laser guns, folks. They are 40K guns those crazy Amazonians are running around with. They come on the model. Chicks with laser guns, Amazons with laser guns. First of all, I don't know a cooler idea. So yes, certainly the old ones left behind that 40K tech.
I would say, is it a planet in the 40K universe? No, because it seems like the entire reality gets consumed at the end of fantasy. So unless 40K is set in the far past of fantasy, I would say no, in a la BSG, warning spoilers. But the flip side is that I think it could be one of the multiple realms of reality with 40K. Yeah, that's what I would say.
All right. Very good. All right. Very good questions there, Dice Miniature Pankai. Now we turn to the Hammer Bros, to Naren Zaid. All right. His first question: who has the best hair in the Warhammer YouTubers community? Best hair.
Best hair.
Yeah, definitely not me. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the winner in this. That I know for sure.
I'm gonna go with Once Bitten, only because I haven't paid too much attention to the hair.
He does have a nice head of hair on him. That's absolutely true. Yeah, he's you know, that's pretty good.
Remington has the Rockstar hair.
Oh, that is true. Yep. Yeah, that's I've got to give it to you, Tom. Remington Steele. First of all, his name is Remington Steele. He's got a great head of hair. He's a rock star. I'm sure there are just, you know, groupies and roadies all over Europe just running their fingers through his hair at night. That's what's going on when he's touring. So yeah, you win. You win again, Remington. All right. Let's see. Hammer Bros. Second question. If you locked Long Island Wargaming, Skaven and AZ, the Sustainable Center, Naren Zaid, Matiram, Malorian, Once Bitten, and Lord Tremendous, and all of us into a cage and force them to battle to the death, who wins? So basically, ourselves and most of the Warhammer YouTubers are in a to-the-death cage match. Apparently 10 men enter, only 1 man leaves. Who wins?
I'm going to go with the Sustainable Center, because I think he'll get angry the quickest and take it seriously first and get the surprise.
All right, the element of surprise is very important, but I mean, you got 10 foes. You can take down a couple of them, but I mean, after that, your surprise is gone. All right, Tom, what about you?
I have to vote for myself.
You really? You're gonna vote for yourself as the coming out as alive?
No, I don't know. I have no idea how to even evaluate what that would look like.
All right. Well, here's my answer. You ready?
Whoever is willing to make friends the quickest. That's what I would say.
That's fair.
Oh,
there are a couple people in here who are members of the military, so they've got a straight advantage. Like a couple members of that group are military people, so that's an advantage. Got to think about that. 2, I mean, Matiram, you know, I mean, he is a physically imposing fellow. He loves the ogres, and I think there's a reason for that. He is. I have no doubt that he would be a serious threat, to say the least. Okay. I got to think, like, you know, but in the end,
I'm going to backing him.
What's that?
Does he have the boys backing him?
That's a good point. I don't. Maybe if they got a team, that's a real advantage. But in the end, I'm going to give this to Naren Zaid, and here's why. Because he films every week from the set of Saw, and I believe he may in fact be a serial killer. So I think that in fact he would have the whole thing rigged in some sort of like Saw-esque thing where we would all die on traps and things in this cage match.
Surprise!
Yeah, we would all just wake up hours later, half unconscious and missing limbs in that murder basement right off camera while he's painting Skaven slaves. All right. So there you go, Naren. That's my answer. You win, buddy. All right, United Wargamer. What do you think of the one rule that removes the core requirements? So in other words, in Archaon. So he's asking what we think about Unbound in Archaon.
I think for the purposes of Archaon, it works. I mean, they pretty much removed a lot. I mean, you could even have a unit champion be your general, because of the way that they set up the army creation rules. So, in the context of the overall army creation rules, core is kind of a meaningless concept at that point.
All right, I like it. Tom?
I mean, it lets me cheat.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I just, as long as everybody's doing it, I don't see a problem with it. But I think it moves in a number of armies, it moves a very large swath of miniatures off of the play table ever. I mean, I just wouldn't field spearmen or archers as a high elf anymore. That just wouldn't happen. I mean, for a couple more points, I'm putting white lion blocks on the table or swordmaster blocks on the table.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah. Exactly. I would think I say the same thing. I think it's fun for an option every now and then to do a cool narrative battle, but ultimately, it doesn't have to be exactly that requirement, but I like there to be some kind of restrictions. I think restrictions build creativity. So that's what I would say. Doesn't have to be percentage, could be anything, but something. All right. Next up, Mr. Malorian says, Malorian at the Sustainable Center and Once Bitten walk into a bar. Finish the joke. Anybody got a good punchline for that? I'll fill it in. I see the bar and duck. Ha ha ha. Classic. All right, very good. I quoted that because that's going to come up later.
Walk into the bar and no one passes?
Yes, exactly. All right. Kieran Dunleavy asks, who was the best new personality that appeared in the End Times? So a new character that was introduced in the End Times. Anybody have a favorite from the story?
I don't know.
Could it be the transformation?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I'm not so familiar with the lore that I would necessarily be able to pick out someone who was entirely new that really stood out. So I'd have to pass on it.
All right.
Like, would you consider, like, I wonder, would Nagash count?
No, because I mean he's definitely been around forever.
Okay, but he's basically the same he was always before.
I mean, in personality, if not in stature of model. He wasn't always as tall as a house. He wasn't always big.
Do you have one, Vince?
I do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mine is Mundavard, or whatever his name is, which out of the crappy book, but I love this guy. He's like the vampire who's defending Marienburg at the beginning of the Glotkin invasion. He's hilarious. He's like a total effete Marienburg noble, but he's a vampire, and he rides out just because the chaos is ruining his plan to slowly take over the city. And the Glotkin throw him into the ocean, which I find hilarious. They just literally pick him up and throw him into the ocean. And he comes back later. I mean, he's not dead. He's just a vampire. So, yeah, he ends up coming back later and having some more fun. I love that dude. I love effete vampires who just get completely housed.
I would, a lot of people are going to cry foul, but I think my favorite new character was the Eternity King. Because the reality is that the Malekith that stepped out of that flame is not the Malekith that we've known for the last 5,000 years. He's a different person. And in the final scene, he threw himself out and stopped Alariel from being crushed under the rocks.
Yeah.
That is not the Malekith that we've known for the last 5,000 years.
I don't poo-poo that answer at all. I think that's a great answer.
Fair.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Skaven and AZ asked, when are we going to see a battle report from me? I don't know. When I stop being lazy, it takes a lot of time. I have like 5-6 battle reports on my phone. Also, I play a lot of 2-on-2 games, and a lot of my friends are lazy and don't paint their models, and people complain about gray models all the time. And that's like all you would see on the other side of the table from me. So whatever. I'll see what I can do. That's my answer.
A road trip. I'm sure there'll be a lot of those battle reported.
Yes, when I go around the country this summer and do the Warhammer YouTuber World Tour, I do plan to make sure I battle report all of those. I'm gonna take notes on everything, so even though I'm recording it after 80 hours of driving and too much caffeine, I'll still have good memories of what's happening. All right, Okay. And then Lord Tremendous says, do you think you could beat him, Lord Tremendous, in a game? And what would you be willing to do to prove it? And my answer, Lord Tremendous, is yes, I think I can. And what would I be willing to do? I would be willing to drive around the country, including to Louisiana, where I'm coming for you, brother. I am coming for you this summer, so you better get ready. All right? Because it's going down.
Some of those souvenir dice.
That's right. At least one game. I plan to let him, you know, I'm planning to maverick him. I'll lose the first time just so I can get the I lost to him dice. Then I come in the second game after I learn his tells and just bam. Then I get the winner dice. You see, I got a plan. Thinking. All right, very good. That brings us to the end of the show. Paul had a good question as well. Paul, I'm not sure that would be appropriate without me restricting it to an 18 or older viewer. You can all go look at the comments on the show if you want to see what Paul's question was. But without repeating it, well, whatever. Paul, my answer is obviously you marry once bitten. He seems the most dependable. Malorian seems like the most fun. So you know that's for the single night. And the Sustainable Center, sorry, but you get the low mana total, so you got to die. All right, there you go. That's my quick answer. There's nothing against Anthony. I love the guy, but you know that's how the game is played. So there it is. You can go look at the comments and post your own answers to that question. I guess that'll be a fun conversation to have in the comments of this video. Other than that, we are over time, so we need to close out. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us, sir. I hope you had a great time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. A pleasure having you. You are welcome back anytime. Tom, once again, thank you as always, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Very good. And as always, everybody, see you next Wednesday.